How do you recommend people? There's a bunch of people listening to this that are curious about how they can start in playing guitar, maybe even playing piano, maybe playing other instruments. Although guitar, of course, is the greatest instrument of all time.
Absolutely.
What are the early steps of that journey? What do you recommend people do in general?
Well, if you're a beginner, getting a good beginner guitar course and learning, first of all, the open chords in first position. A lot of songs can be played that way. A lot of old songs can be played that way, maybe not new modern songs necessarily.
So learning a few chords and with an eye towards maybe playing a song.
Yeah. With an eye towards you learn the chord shapes and you learn how to strum basic patterns to begin with. I think the first thing for learning guitar is actually how to position your fingers so that you don't mute strings that you don't want to mute.
Oh, yeah.
That's the hardest thing for people to do, basically, is to get their fingers arched to where if you're playing a C major chord, your index finger's on the first fret of the B string, and you have to have that open E string ringing there. And it's hard for people to make those micro adjustments. You take it for granted, Lex, you've been playing guitar for I don't know how many years, forever, right?
Forever, yeah.
And you don't even think about stuff like that when you're playing a guitar solo. Every little thing that you do, if you're playing your comfortably numb guitar solo, you have to, out of midair, strike the string that your finger's on to play the note. And these are all fine adjustments that you're doing.
I'm just a hobbyist recreational player, but wow, you're taking me all the way back. You're right. It's the haptic, the physical aspect of it is really tricky. Comfortably numb is a good example. Though if you do lead, you have to get a super clean sound. Now that's both when you're playing fast, you want it to be super precise, but when you play slow, when you have one note and you're holding it and you're bending it, it better be really clean. And
Yes.
for that, I guess you have to really place the finger in the right place. Plus there's the calluses, so it doesn't hurt. And then the positioning of the string on the curvature of the
Yes.
finger. Where does it fall? Like, how much do you bend the finger?
You have to have enough of flesh on it to actually raise the string in pitch.
Yeah.
Otherwise
Yeah, because you're lifting it with part of a flesh. And of course, you have to decide, depends how OCD you are. Do you want to be like the proper musician? Or do you want to do a Hendrix? So the thumb over the top.
Way over the top, yes.
And so, like, if you have a fretboard here, I think the more like classical guitarists, the very proper, perfect, perpendicular alignment of the fingertips to the fretboard, versus like Hendrix is like, fuck it, you nerds. I'm gonna do it with the messiness is part of the magic. Of course, like BB King is also kind of messy looking in terms of his positioning of the fingers, but his tone is incredibly clean.
Yes, super clean.
So like that teaches you that maybe any position can converge towards a super clean tone. You just have to figure it out.
I think a lot of it has to do with how they wear their guitars. If you wear your guitar low, if you're Hendrix and you're wearing your guitar,
that's true.
If you're wearing it lower, then you can't get your fingers on top of it like that. And the thumb acts as a way to mute the lower strings from ringing if you're playing through a loud amplifier. So there's so many other micro adjustments when you're playing leads, because you have to kind of mute the other strings so they don't ring out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing the first note and comfortably numb and the solo at the end, and you're at the 9th fret of the G string and you bend that, if you bend that G string and you accidentally hit the B string under it, you don't want that ringing. So you have to kind of angle your index finger to mute that. So all these micro adjustments that you don't even think about. I mean, you're not thinking about that, Lex, when you're playing it. You've done it so many times that these things are just part of your brain. That's why this is such a great brain developer for kids to learn instruments.
And of course, you have to solve that puzzle. It must be really frustrating in the beginning, like holding a chord.
Yes.
Like all of them. And it hurts too, right?
It does
if you're
hurt.
doing acoustic guitar.
Not for that long, though. For like a week.
Couple weeks.
I don't want to discourage anyone. It's actually pretty easy to learn. basic stuff.
Right, but the pain is temporary, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make.
It is.
So what else? So the physical component, play a few chords. Where does the journey continue if you're learning guitar?
Well, then it's like if you play electric guitar, then you get into single note playing and stuff like that. That's where it gets, to me, where it gets really fun. You have single note playing that with riffs, if you think of Back in Black, right, that has a riff embedded in the actual melody, or many songs that have riffs, the Hendrix stuff that has chordal riffs, and you're moving up the neck and involving all the fingers and things like that. So it really depends on what styles you want to play.
So you're thinking about song learning, so different components of song learning, so riffs in songs, lead in songs.
And then you have finger picking. If you have Stairway to Heaven, songs like that. How about wanting to learn that? That involves finger picking because you have to isolate certain notes of the chord and play two together, and multiple times.
There's a few crossroads where you get to select things. So I guess you're speaking to the fact if you're righty, there's a right hand that you can use your fingers or you can use a pick.
Correct.
And it's a choice you make.
And sometimes you use both. Because in Stairway to Heaven, you're using the fingers at the beginning or fingers and pick. Hybrid, they call it hybrid picking. And then later on, you're using the pick to flat pick the picking patterns.
On the music theory front, do you recommend people learn scales and chords and like the theory of it?
Later on, I would say. I wouldn't say necessarily right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I think learning songs is the first thing that you should do because you want to keep people motivated.
So you get them to like fall in love with music and playing. All right. And that takes a couple months, 3 months.
Depends on how motivated they are.
So you recommend practicing what, every day?
Every day. My son Dylan, when he started learning the guitar a couple years ago, I said, it's better to practice 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, than to practice one day for an hour, which is roughly the same amount of time.
Yeah, but it usually turns into something longer. But otherwise, like if you're a busy life, taking a day off, that day turns into a week, and then a week turns into a month, and all of a sudden you haven't touched the instrument for months.
Which is why I leave my guitar on a stand all the time. So that if I walk by it, I'm like, okay, I'll just pick it up for a second. And then the second turns into 10 minutes and an hour, 2 hours.